Hello again, everybody. I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with a couple books that I think are good books to binge read. Like binge readable books. Books that you want to binge read once you pick them up, you know what I mean? Like they're so hard to put down. Because February, right? We're in February. It is a short month. Also, January was the beginning of the year. And so like you have a lot of motivation at first and then that kind of fizzles off in the second month of the year, I think. So you can watch this in February for our recommendations for February, or you can watch this because also sometimes in the middle of the year, I get this thing where it's like my reading slows down. I've read too much, too fast. And my brain gets kind of fuzzy and can't pay attention to reading so good. But these are books that I found unputdownable. Once I picked them up, it was so hard to set them down and like reacquaint myself with the real world. So I have a list of books like that. In case your reading ever, kind of slows down or you need something to get you out of a slump. I don't know, here I am with a bunch of books that I thought were good. Okay, first one I'm going to tell you about because I don't have a physical copy in front of me. And I say this every time, I have a fucking goldfish brain. So if it's not in front of me, sometimes I just forget about it. It's so stupid, that thing that my brain does. Anyways, this is Come Closer by Sara Gran. This is a horror novel. And it's actually a novella, I believe. I read it. It was on Kindle Unlimited when I read it. It was so good. So this is about a woman, and she starts noticing strange things happening in her head. She's in a relationship that she doesn't really know if she wants to be in. And so like her life's at kind of like a point where it's a little bit stale and she doesn't know what to do about it. And then these strange things start happening, like she loses large chunks of time and stuff like that. I don't want to tell you too much about this. It is a novella, and a big part of a big part of what happens is kind of like the twist. So like I could tell you what happens and like explain the plot a little bit more, but I feel like I shouldn't. So I'm not going to. Anyways, that's Come Closer by Sara Gran. It was on Kindle Unlimited and could still be. I can't find a fucking physical copy of this. I mean, like, maybe I could if I wanted to spend a lot of money, but I've never come across it. Never comes up on thrift books. I haven't looked for it on eBay, but I can't imagine it would be very cheap. So, I don't know. Maybe it's out of print. Anyways, Come Closer, Sara Gran. It's a good one. Next up, another novella. Probably one that you're sick of me talking about if you watch my channel regularly, but this is Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is another horror novella. Oh man, I just love a novella that I can sit down and just read like all the way through. Even if it's just a couple sittings, like in 2 days, I can sit down and read it in like 2 sittings or 1 if I'm lucky, which I'm not a lot of the time. Like I don't just have a lot of time to do that, but this is a really grief-heavy novella about a mother who has recently lost her son in a car accident, and she's having a really hard time with the grieving process. She is divorced. He was her only child, and so like, what does she fucking do now? One day she is visiting the memorial site that she's created for him at the site of his car accident, and she has a cut on her hand that opens up as she's like dusting off his memorial, and her blood drips down her hand into the soil. And later that night she thinks she sees something that looks like her son underneath the light of a street lamp. Very spooky visually. Whew, this is a really gripping and grief-filled little book. It's just like, it really makes you reflect, especially I think if you have kids. Maybe not so much if you don't, but maybe you could imagine. Not that, you have to have kids to understand how people with kids feel about things, but it really made me reflect on my life, I guess, like how much, what would I give What would I sacrifice to see my dead child? Really hard to think about. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna start tearing up. This was so good and so sad, and it gets dark and it gets bleak and it is so hard to put down. Next on my list is a book that you might have seen earlier this month because I read it and did a review on it. This is Good Neighbors by Sara Langan, and this is another thriller. This is basically a story about a neighborhood that rallies together to pick on another family in the neighborhood, and things devolve very quickly. It gets very messy and horrible. It's sometimes a little bit absurd and funny, and equally like horrible and bleak and sad and hopeful, and like there's friendships and also, you know, bullies, and it is such an explosive little book. It is not novella length, but it is about shy of 300 pages, so it was so easy to read. The writing was just so palatable. I don't know how to explain it. You know, like some books are so dense and like the verbiage is so just like reading Dan Simmons, you know, it's like, oh my god, how does this guy have friends in real life? Like, does anyone love him? Because I can't imagine having a conversation with him. He's a human. But this was just so easy to pick up and read. It was so hard to put down again. This was a book where it was like, shut up, do not fucking speak to me. I have my fake people I care about more right now than my real people. Just kidding, kind of. It was just such a weird, like, it's about this neighborhood, and like a sinkhole opens up and one of the neighborhood children falls in, and like the family of that child blames another family, and like that's why everybody rallies together to like pick on these monsters when like, are they really monsters? Did this really happen? It's just so good. I loved reading this book. I want to pick it up and read it again. I like miss these people in this book already. Ugh. I just finished it a couple weeks ago. What's wrong with me? I cheated a little bit because I did look to see the books I included in the video I did like this last year to make sure I didn't, you know, duplicate them. But then I decided to duplicate this one anyways because it's so good and I hardly ever see anyone talk about this, and I don't really know why. It could be because it's a translated piece of work. The author's Brazilian. It is translated. It's translated by Alison Entrikin. And this is a thriller about a young man named Teo, and he is kind of a strange person, and he is not somebody who gets along well with others. He has kind of a abrasive personality and stuff. He lives with his mother. Things aren't going great for him, but he is going to medical school, so he's trying. And he ends up meeting kind of this young woman named Clarice, and something about her just is irresistible to him. And during like their first meeting, she talks about how she wants to be a writer, but she really just like does not have the discipline to sit down and write. She doesn't have the discipline to do it. She can't make herself do it. So he thinks that he's going to help her out. So he abducts her and holds her captive so that she can write her book. This is another like pretty short one. It was so hard to put it down once I started reading it. And I think what really stands out to me still is the ending of this book. I will never forget the ending. It is so haunting. I wish I could tell you guys about it. Oh, it was so... I'll just never forget it. It's disturbing in a way where it's like... It's not graphic and it's not gory. It's like emotionally disturbing. That's a great book. I really wish I would see more people read it. That's why I'm recommending it again. It's so good. It's so good. Rambling on. This is Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Wrobel. I read this last year, and I think when I read it, it was like the very beginning of the Great War. So like, at least here, it was like early March, I think, and the pandemic panic, rightfully so. We should have, maybe not been panicking, but we should have started being very cautious. So everyone's very panicky. It's when you had to wait outside Costco for 3 hours to get a roll of toilet paper. And so like things are not going very well. I was very concerned about, what was going on. Schools had shut down and this book was released. And so like, I feel like that can kind of attest to how bingeable this book was, because all this shit was going on and my brain was very overwhelmed, but I was still able to zone out and become absorbed in this book. And if you guys have heard of the now very infamous murder of Dee Blanchard by her daughter Gypsy Rose Blanchard, this is very similar. Like basically the author based her character's backstory on that, but it's more like that's the backstory and what would have happened if, instead of being murdered by her daughter, Dee Blanchard went to prison and now she's about to come out of prison. So like Rose Gold's mother was abusing her, medically abusing her. They used to call it Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but now I believe they call it medical child abuse. So she was being medically child abused. And her mother went to prison, and now her mother's getting out of prison, and everyone is wondering, like, how Rose Gold's gonna take this, because she's had to basically learn how to be a real person, learn how to be an adult and take care of herself, which she, never did before, was never able to before. And people are very curious when Rose Gold opens her arms to her mother and accepts her and offers to let her mother move in with her. So it is a doozy, as you can imagine. You're constantly wondering like, what's going on? Why did this happen? What is the history of this family? Because you do kind of get hints that Rose Gold's mother has a history of abuse in her own life as a child. And like, why did this happen? Why did nobody see this happening? Does Rose Gold have any nefarious plans? And it was pretty good. I think the thing with this one is that I wish it maybe had deviated a little bit more from like the Blanchard story, but the backstory in this was very similar, very, very similar to that. But I liked that, she altered it, she took it a little further into the future to see like what would happen if. And we found out maybe what would happen if. And it was a good one. Last but not least here, I have The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Ruth Ware is a pretty popular thriller writer by now. This was her second to last new release, I think, because I know there was One by One that came out in 2020. I believe this one came out in 2019. But this is about a young woman who takes a nannying job at kind of a more remote, like countryside fancy house. And the house is kind of interesting because half of it is like the old countryside style and half of it is like modern industrial weirdness, and it's also a smart house. And weird things start happening in the house, and it seems like the technology in the house is being spooky, and like, why would technology be spooky? It doesn't make sense. Another aspect I liked of this was that the children she's nannying for are kind of tiny monsters, which I always love a good, like, really horrible child in a book. This was all around really fun. I can't say that the twist like knocked me off my feet, but I did really enjoy it, and it was another book that it was just like, once I started reading it, like, who cares? Is the house on fire? I don't care. Shut up. I'm reading. That's what it felt like. When I was reading this book, I think it's like a play on Turn of the Screw, but honestly, I have no idea what that's about. I don't know. I can't tell you what it's about. So Is that about a haunted smart house? I don't think so. So that is my stack of books that I thought were super bingeable. Books that you might want to try out if you get into a reading slump. If you need something fast-paced and really engaging, these are your guys. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. Let me know if there are any books that you've read recently or like that stick in your mind as books that are unputdownable, you know, books that you just can't help but finish once you open it up on the first page. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in another video, but until next time, I'll see you later.